We definitely started bonding at this point. We were driving together all the time and eating together and stuff. And really, I think what was really important was that we created this bond through treatment. We had lost it. I mean, we had absolutely lost our bond because of everything I was going through. And I was such a mama's boy growing up. Man, I was the biggest mama's boy. I remember everything I had to run by my mom. My mom would get mad. But at this point, so my mom and I really, grew a bond. And I remember driving up in her car was an exposure. She would eat at fast food and there would be grease in her car. And, she would drive and put papers that came from her tented house in the car. So driving up in the car was definitely an exposure for me. But my motivation had changed now. I mean, I really did it at the beginning for her, but as I started seeing this therapy working, as I started to conquer things and get my time back, my motivation was for myself. And it really helped that we were going through this together. My mom did so much research. I was not a research person, but we had a break between my individual therapy and my group therapy, and we would sit at a restaurant. She would always come with this heavy sack and read just articles and articles about OCD. So that really helped that we had that together and understood. I had two kinds of support system. From my dad, my grandma, my sister, that I was living with, they were the support that we don't want. They were so annoyed with me. Everything I did somehow bothered them. I would cut 4-hour shower down to 2 hours, and they would complain that it was still 2 hours. They were always calling my therapist and saying, he did this again, or he's doing that. And I would have on my fridge, my homework and the charts of all the stuff I was doing, and they'd be like, yeah, but why can't you work on this? And it just got to the point where it would make me worse. And what I started doing is waiting till they all go to bed and just doing all my rituals throughout the middle of the night, going to bed when the sun would come up. I would call her so many times, and she'd be leaving for work, and I'd be calling her like, I'm going to bed now, because I was trying to hide from my parents. They were never active in my treatment. They never did research. They were not beneficial. I was lucky that I was able to kind of switch what they were doing into a motivator and saying, I can't wait to beat this and just in all of their faces. And also, when I'd be taking a shower, and I knew, okay, if the shower goes past 20 minutes, they're going to be banging on the door, so I better get out. So I was able to switch it, but I wish they would have been more like my mom and my sister, who they really pointed out my successes. Every time I would see her, she'd be like, wow, you couldn't do this last week, or you couldn't do that. And that success breeded success for me. It made me hungry for that success. I grew up playing sports and doing well in school and achieving, and I wanted that feeling again. And my sister, she did try to, not that she knew, she was young at the time, 18 or 19, but she would enable me. But because I knew what enabling was and that it was detrimental, I would never let her enable me. But what I think was so sweet is she would always lean to me and just be like, are you okay? Are you fine? And just kind of check in with me. So it felt really good to have that support from them.
This is one of the first pictures. It was about 10 years before I got a picture of Chris. And I think I kind of got this one on the side. I don't think he was expecting a camera, but because of his BDD, I did not get a picture of him for about 10 years. So as he went through therapy, he was more able to appreciate that he was okay. He wasn't grotesque. But at this time, my role was evolving, and I became more like a sponsor or a cheerleader, and that's really what I did. Chris would be working on his OCD, but he still had thinking that wasn't quite right. It wasn't that circular rambling thinking, but it was like a black and white, all or nothing thinking. And he'd call and, I just did this, I had a bad day, treatment's not working. We might as well stop, it's not working. And I would be, no, treatment's working. Remember last week you couldn't do this, now you're doing that, it's working. Or he'd go on Facebook and go, everybody my age has a job, and I'm never going to have a job. I'm just a loser. What's the point? So a lot of coaching, just keeping him going, keeping him focused, and helping him learn that each time he had a setback, he was not starting from scratch. He really was making progress, because it's always hard to see progress when you're in the middle of it. It helps. And again, because I had full access and he was always talking to me, I knew what he was making progress in. And I could keep him going, that you're making great progress. You're really getting somewhere.
I think that we should apologize ahead of time for this picture. I thought it was Ryan Seacrest, apparently with blonde hair. I just noticed, so ignore that. I was a little chubby too, but we'll deal. I was having a lot of successes at this point, a lot of success, and I was definitely doing it for myself now. I was at the point where I could start going, I wasn't, totally scot-free, but I was finally able to go to the grocery store during the daytime, and I was finally able to put product in my hair, and I was finally able to, leave the house, it really just was so freeing to look around and be like, wow, this is what daytime looks like. So I was doing it for myself, and I started to realize with the support of my mom that treatment was gradual. It wasn't like a start here, end here. There was ups and downs, and my mom was really there to tell me the days that I was having it down that, no, you're going to get through this, because when you're in it, it feels like this is the end. You don't even remember yesterday. The way that it worked is because we could not afford, I was living in Laguna at that time, so the drive and the therapy to come up here more than once, I was only going once a week. So she was assigning a lot of homework for me. So she was like a teacher. She would assign homework, and she was like, this week you have to do this. And I was really good, knowing how much we were paying her, to contact her if I was having an off week and just saying, look, I'm having a really bad week. I would see her on a Wednesday. It's already Friday. I haven't even started my homework. And she'd either tweak my homework or she would give me a pep talk to really get me going. The group therapy was great. I was able to go in, and I would always, kind of start off my comment with, this is going to sound weird, and everybody in the room was like, oh no, we did that weeks ago, you're late, So it always felt nice to have a group of people kind of be like, oh yeah, that was day one. I'll say this about medication. I don't like talking about medication as much because there's so many different opinions about it, but medication, I did not take medication for the first 6 months of my therapy. There were so many issues with it. The thought of touching a medicine in my hands were never clean enough, and it going in my body. I didn't know if the medication would kill me, and you hear the commercial, and the list of side effects was longer than the actual commercial, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. So I was flushing my Luvox and then Prozac at the time down the toilet, and wherever it drains, that area of the ocean, there are no depressed or OCD fish, octopus, they're good. They're good, because they got a lot of my Prozac. Finally, my therapist and my meds doctor kind of could figure out something was wrong and approached me, and I admitted that I wasn't taking medication. And luckily, I was at a point where I tried it, and the medication was really, really effective for me. I took Prozac, and being on the medication, it made the OCD thoughts fewer and far between, and it made them quieter, and it was so much easier to start reaching the higher things on my hierarchy.
Yeah, and we started to make deals at this point. I know there's a lot of talk about contracts, and that a lot of times can work. We made verbal contracts, and just because Chris was good to his word, if he made it, we didn't have to write it down, etc. He was into it. He wanted to get better every week. So we made a lot of verbal contracts. If you are more than half an hour late, we're leaving without you. If you show up 2 hours late to Thanksgiving dinner, we'll have eaten all the turkey. And he'd say, okay, that's fine. You'll have eaten all the turkey. So he knew if he showed up 2 hours late, we had not waited for him. And so contracts like that we would make, and verbal contracts, and they helped him move forward too, helped him take some responsibility and get back into things.
And I was at the end of my treatment at this point. We were reaching all the 10s, and my final stuff was having my therapist come to my house. No one had been in my room in years. Nobody had touched my stuff. I hadn't driven anybody. Nobody touched my clothes. Nobody touched anything of mine. And I remember her coming. The anticipatory anxiety was so huge. I was so afraid. And I remember, and she was so dramatic too. I remember she rolled around on my bed. I'm like, you can't just touch the corner. You really have to go there. And she's like, whee, all over my bed. It was so bad. And she was taking my towels and throwing them up like a pizza or something. I just remember all this stuff, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I wonder if she just goes missing, how bad that would be. I was so angry. I remember I had to drive her around, but you know what? It really broke it. Once she left, I was kind of like, okay, that's it. And she approached me, she's like, there's nothing more we can do. It's all about you now taking what you've learned and going out there. And I did. One of the biggest things that I started doing was keeping that up, offering the drive. And I think more importantly was becoming busy. I started volunteering at an animal shelter, and I fell in love with this little Maltese. And unfortunately, he died when he was getting a shot. So after that, I was like, I need to get a dog. And that's when my Snoop was born. He's the cutest little guy ever. He's my son. He is absolutely too adorable. He poses. This is his 4th of July pose. He throws his butt in the air. And you know what? He would lick my face. And my God, 2 months before, if a dog would have licked my face, I would have had to decontaminate my face. But now he licks me. Even my mom's like, that's gross. But I'm like, no, he's my son. He will lick my food, and I'm like, oh, but back then I would have ran the other way. I started getting a job again. I was working at LA Fitness, and I was, they kept promoting me, and I was getting more hours, and it was great. I was building confidence. I went back to school, friends, and dating. But at this point, I was just keeping busy. I didn't really have a life plan. I was sort of I felt like a bomb had gone off, and I was sort of living in the rubble, and I was content. because at least I was busy and not giving into the OCD. And nobody told me, I mean, I think that's the one thing I never got told, was nobody told me like, hey, once OCD treatment's done, you're gonna have to build up your life again. I mean, I got super sick at 17, 18, and now I'm 25. And here I am at 25 years old, like, okay, what do I do? You know, I'm kind of lost. And so nobody really told me that. And I decided that good wasn't good enough, and I really wanted to do more with my life. And even though I was busy and didn't have a plan, I wanted to transition back into life now, a life that I wanted. And so I decided that I wanted to go back to therapy. The real reason it decided was I ended up getting a job on camera, doing some on-camera hosting for MTV. And, oh, that's my little headshot, ignore that. But, you know, I was doing on camera, and I would sit in these editing bays, and I would, if anyone watches Glee, that's Harry Strong from Glee, but I would get to this point where I was overanalyzing how I looked and everything and stuff, and so I thought I needed to go back for BDD, but what my therapist really quickly understood was, it's not really about your BDD, you just are lost. And spending time in therapy was so important to kind of figure out, okay, this is what you want to do for your life, this is where you have to go to school, and this is where you have to go to work and everything, and that was really important.
Yeah, and at this point, by this point, I was more of his life coach, which is what I feel like I am now, which is what I think is pretty much my role anyhow as a mom with a 29-year-old. Every once in a while he'll call and say, I just had a BDD moment, but it's so fleeting and it's over, and he knows how to get out of it. He will ask me questions sometimes. He's not sure what's normal sometimes, and I think that's from missing a number of years. And sometimes I'll have to tell him, Chris, it's okay. You don't want somebody to smoke in your car. I don't want somebody to smoke in my car. That's not OCD. That's normal. That's okay. So his thinking has gone back to a rational thinking. There's no OCD thoughts going on. He has worked very hard the last 2 years to catch up and to try to figure out what he wants to do. He loves interviewing people on the red carpet. He's in school, I guess you could say more of what you're doing. And
yeah, I mean, you know, lastly, just trying to kind of finish up, I mean, I look around sometimes and just am like, wow, is this really my life? Because a couple years ago I wasn't doing anything. I mean, I was real fortunate. I'm back in school. And I got this amazing job working, you know, interviewing on the red carpet and stuff, and I covered the Golden Globes and got to interview Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and George Clooney, and here I am interviewing them for the Hollywood Foreign Press, and a couple years ago I couldn't even get out of bed. But the other big passion that I have is giving back, and I was so fortunate to be asked to be part of the internet. Well, I didn't really ask. I annoyed them with enough emails until they said yes, so I'm part of the International OCD Speakers Bureau now, which they've come to me now and been like, we're glad you came, but at first you were a little annoying. But I you know, speak out. I've done newspapers, magazines, and speaking at different conferences, and I've, you know, spoken to people online and in person. But I think one of the greatest things was why I'm going to school to become an OCD therapist. I got hired by the Gateway Institute, which is an OCD clinic down in Orange County, to do everything I can before I get my license. So being able to talk to people in therapy and just kind of let them know I was there with you. I went through that as well. And helping do the support groups, and I think that has been so, I do go to bed sometimes just really happy knowing that I really helped and wishing that I had something like that. So in conclusion, we just want to say there was definitely no magic formula. It was hard work, but I had to decide to want to get better. No matter what my motivation was, I had to make that decision to get better. And it's important to have a therapist that you can form a bond with and trust. And I learned that treatment for life. Anytime something pops up, I remember what I went through in treatment and I do it, and I think that's a real reason that I haven't relapsed. And then lastly, I was super fortunate, I don't know who you believe in up there, but I was super fortunate to be born to such an amazing mom, because I know that without someone like that on my side and to be there for me and stuff, I wouldn't be speaking with you today. If I would have had two parents like my dad, I would have either attempted suicide again or I would have been dropped off the face of the earth. So I do, even though I don't always say it, appreciate everything she did and still does to this day. And thank you, even if I don't say it. So thank you so much. And we just want to say thank you guys so much for having us today. It means a lot for you to let us come and share our story. So thank you so much. Thank you all.